So as we are quickly approaching the deadline for instant eligibility, it's no surprise that there are players eyeing the transfer portal wondering what could be on the other side. But today, we need to talk about a former starting quarterback entering the portal as Gerry Bohanon enters the transfer portal in a massive move. We need to talk about first, why I don't expect him to sit in the portal long, and then secondly, why this is such an interesting move overall, and we're going to break it all down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you surprised that Bohanon is testing the portal? And then let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, like and comment down below, as those interactions, though seemingly small, are incredibly impactful to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all of that, let's jump right into this. And let's start with my first point, that I don't expect Gerry Bohanon to be in the transfer portal for long. And simply put, it's because you don't see former starting quarterbacks enter the transfer portal every day. Gerry Bohanon is an individual that you know has translated to the collegiate game. He was successful in the Big 12. He accounted for over 2,000 yards into the air, and he won some big games for the Bears. And so because of that, when you look around the landscape of college football, how many teams are still interested in if they can add in a talented passer into the fold? I don't expect Bohanon to sit there long. One of the things that teams crave out the transfer portal is experience, because you can get a guy that has played sparingly out the transfer portal, and you have some indication that this is someone who will be successful. But at the level of experience you're getting out of Gerry Bohanon, that's just not something you see every day, and when you do see it, those quarterbacks typically don't sit into the portal very long unless they're shopping around at multiple options. And so because of that, I think multiple teams will be interested in Bohanon. He combines a combination of intriguing ability plus experience that I think is going to excite some teams. But we also need to talk about why this is such an interesting move overall. And first and foremost, we need to understand the era of college football we are in, and that's the transfer portal era. And in this era where we can look around the college football landscape and see so many other head coaches who are experiencing these quarterback battles take them the distance, and I do mean the distance, like a week or two before the season starts, Dave Aranda breaks from the mold and names one in spring, and that's intriguing because you have to understand the implications of naming a quarterback this early. In the transfer portal era, it's incredibly more likely that these players are going to opt to hit the transfer portal to explore options elsewhere, especially if there's someone who started the previous year, such as Bohanon. And so when Dave Aranda names Shapen as the starter, he understands the implications. He understands the possibilities and what could happen, but he does so knowing that he has faith in the guy he's naming. And that's intriguing on multiple different levels. And I think it's indicative of the type of program Dave Aranda is trying to run. And that's one that's forthright. And that's interesting because we know what kind of coach Dave Aranda is in terms of an X's and O's guys. He's a brilliant defensive mind. And he's somebody that seems to be translating to a head coach incredibly well very early on in his career as well. I mean, he's a coach that if you're a Baylor fan, you need to be very excited that he is a Baylor Bear. I think the eyes of college football and the college football fanatics are watching Baylor to see what Dave Aranda does next. He is a really exciting young head coach in our game. By naming a starter now, he's allowing Gerry Bohanon to explore his options. What would have been an advantageous move for Aranda and Baylor might not necessarily have been an advantageous move for Gerry Bohanon. And so in doing this, Dave Aranda is thinking about what's advantageous for the player, and that's such an intriguing and cool thing to see in today's college football. And one of the things it reminds me of is whenever you're hearing about these top coaches and the different approaches they have to recruiting, and make no mistake, whenever a player is actively thinking about transferring, that is now a part of college football recruiting. The landscapes of college football are shifting and shifting rapidly, and recruiting is now more apparent than ever in so many different facets. But whenever that player is thinking about it, it reminds me of all of the instances of these top-level coaches and the forthright approach they have to recruiting. For instance, you always hear about all of the former Alabama players talking about getting recruited by Nick Saban, and one of the things that stands out is they say he was one of the only coaches that never promised playing time. The only thing he promised was that I would have an opportunity to compete for playing time, and that's intriguing. And while this isn't analogous, it's similar in the sense that Dave Aranda was forthright in what was about to happen, and because of that, Bohanon now gets to explore the best options for himself, and this is just a situation we're going to have to watch closely because, as I said, I don't expect him to sit in the portal long. So hop down to the comments and let me know what you're thinking about this. That's it. See ya.